Oh, I forgot something. Yep. Back in Minecraft Release 1.0, a brand new mechanic was added to the game, this being Enchanting. However, it was very different from the enchanting system that we know nowadays, and that's because it was much worse. In the current versions of Minecraft, you can get XP from doing almost anything, get to max enchantment levels at level 30, and use lapis to then add enchantments to items, costing as much as the level you choose. So the first spot costs 1 level and 1 lapis, the second costs 2 of both, and the third costs 3 of both. In 1.0, the only way to get XP was by killing mobs. Max enchantments were at level 50, and when you enchant something, it costs all your levels. This, as you can imagine, is a major problem, and not just in comparison to the current system. Okay, cool, I grinded for multiple hours without dying just to spend 30 levels to get efficiency 3, but now my pickaxe is almost broken. Guess I should make an anvil and... Yeah, the problem with this system is, unless you get the luck equivalent of rolling triple sevens and get them breaking, this new tool that you just spent hours on getting the enchantments for will last just as long as a regular unenchanted one. So, you need to repair it. And oh boy, I hope you like the repairing system in this version. Anvils don't exist in 1.0, so the only way to repair a tool is to combine it with the same tool in a crafting table. But this also removes the enchantments of both items. Wow, this sucks. This repairing system is too situational to actually be useful. Anyways, let's fast forward to release 1.3. Or really 1.3.1, because Mojang's version naming scheme was just as terrible as the enchanting system at this time. But with this version, the enchanting system would no longer be as terrible since things were changed to be more like how they are now. Max enchantments are now at level 30, you're more likely to get multiple enchantments whenever you enchant something, and breaking mob spawners, mining specific ores, and smelting now all give XP. Except enchanting still makes you poor. Yeah, Mojang, this is great and all, but this doesn't solve the repairing problem. Well, Mojang listened, and now in version 1.4.2, also known as the Pretty Scary update, we got the Anvil. And a new boss, but who cares? With the Anvil, you can now repair and rename items while keeping their enchantments, let's go! And then in 1.4.6 we got enchanted books, and now we can manually add specific enchantments to our items and... This is terrible. Don't get me wrong, the things that the Anvil can do are awesome, but the way that the game calculates and deals with the XP price when using an Anvil has been incredibly flawed for the over 10 years this item has been in the game. Looking at the Minecraft wiki, there's been some great changes done to this item, but all the changes have barely tackled the core issue with the Anvil and how it causes it to be worse. The big issue I'm talking about is the level cap in survival mode, which is the dumbest thing this block can have, and I'm sure most of you have run into this issue when playing survival. You're adding enchantments to an item, preparing it, or combining it with another tool, and then you get the message that the total price is too expensive. The game does this because, in survival, if the XP price for doing something in an Anvil is above 39 levels, it just won't let you. So, wait, how did we even get to 39 levels? When you do something in an Anvil, the game calculates the price in 2 parts. Prior use penalty, and the second one is different depending on what you're actually doing in the Anvil. The first one, prior use penalty, is actually the reason why the price of an item keeps going up. It actually ends up being most of the XP price in the end. Prior use penalty is calculated based on a hidden counter that every item has, that being the Anvil use count, which, as you can imagine, is the amount of times an item has been used in an Anvil. The game then takes this count and puts it into this formula. Like said before, the second half depends on what you're actually doing to the item, so I'll quickly go over those differences. Renaming an item just adds 1 extra level to the price, and caps out at 39, so even whenever you put an item in an Anvil and it immediately says too expensive, you can still rename it. Renaming an item also doesn't count towards an item's Anvil use count. Adding enchantments with books refers to this chart. Each enchantment added to an item takes its enchantment multiplier and multiplies that by the level of the enchantment. This is done for each enchantment, meaning the more enchantments on a book, the higher the price. Combining 2 tools together will cost 2 levels, plus the cost of adding the enchantments from the second item, like with books, but this time using a more expensive chart for some reason. But if the second item you're combining with the first isn't enchanted, it's just 2 levels. Okay, now we have a vague understanding of how this system works, so now I'm going to go over the reasons why this system is broken. Number 1. The second half of the price is determined by the result of what the second item in the Anvil does to the first, meaning if you swap the placements of the 2 items, the price can be drastically different. This makes no sense when it comes to combining 2 of the same item, especially since the result can be the exact same. And not only just in the enchantments and durability, but in the item's Anvil use count, because, fun fact, When putting two items together in an anvil, the game doesn't add one to the anvil use count of the first item, it adds one to whichever item has the higher anvil use count. That part makes sense, but this makes the whole price difference depending on the order, even though the result is still the same, even more dumb. Number 2. I think outside the price cap, the thing that annoys me the most is that this system is different between Bedrock and Java. I know it shouldn't be surprising that two systems work differently between Bedrock and Java since they're literally made in two different programming languages, but it's the differences that make me question this system even more. In both versions, when combining two items with the same enchantment and the same level for that enchantment, the level of the enchantment is increased by 1. So sharpness 4 combined with sharpness 4 gets you sharpness 5. But the differences lie on the price. So adding sharpness 4 to sharpness 4 not only increases the level to 5, but now you have to pay the price as if you were adding sharpness 5, which has 5 levels by the way. On Bedrock Edition, it's based on the changes, not the resulting item. So sharpness 4 and sharpness 4, making sharpness 5, on Bedrock only cost 1 level. Number 3. Repairing an item counts towards the anvil use count. And yeah, that should be obvious, and while that does make sense, it makes it much harder to add enchantments to an item in the future, so there's no point in it, especially since it can only be done a certain amount of times. The worst part about that is instead of solving the issue, Mojang made the mending enchantment. Nothing against mending, but this is what Mojang uses as a solution for the anvil issue, making this item's original use obsolete, especially considering how easy 1.14 made getting mending. There's almost no reason to repair an item instead of just adding mending. Even then, because of how easy it is to get XP now, in most cases it's more worthwhile to make a new tool and enchant it, rather than spending materials fixing an item that just gets more expensive the more you do it. And because of that, the only time where it would make sense to repair a tool would be if that item already has a lot of enchantments on it, so it wouldn't be worth it to replace it. But if that's the case, the item probably already has mending. And finally, number 4. Prior use penalty uses this equation, which means that the price exponentially increases. The idea of prices exponentially increasing is fine to me, but this is too high, especially with the level cap. Maybe lower it to like 1.5 instead of 2. But that reminds me, number 5, the level cap. Why does it exist? Seriously, what is the argument for the level cap? What, it would be too overpowered if you could just infinitely use it? How? You can already add all the enchantments for an item by combining books in a certain way, and because of mending, you almost never have to repair an item in an anvil. If the player has the levels to use an anvil, then let them use an anvil, even if the price is insanely high. I can understand if, for some reason, the original idea was to limit the amount of times you can use an item in an anvil, but this philosophy is obviously something Mojang doesn't follow anymore, especially when you have things like mending. So if Mojang doesn't think that the use of an item should be limited, why is the system still like this? The anvil has gotten to a point where using it for its original purpose hinders your gameplay, and it's only known now for adding enchantments to items, something which even then it's struggling to do. Mojang, the more updates you release, the more enchantments become an integral part of the game. So with how important of a block the anvil is, why has it been left in such a broken state? I'm sure I'm not breaking new grounds with this video. You're all probably well aware of this issue and want it to be fixed. So, Mojang, take the advice of the community on this one. In fact, here's a glimpse of a future where you fix this. So, I somehow managed to forget that fire aspect is a thing, so I'm just gonna add it to the sword and... yeah, that seems about right.